Okay. And to our online congregation, greetings and good morning. Rumor has it, someone here is celebrating an anniversary. How do I interpret 40 years as a deaconess? This morning and this afternoon, with a hurt foot and no small amount of disbelief. Asked for a 6-word introduction of myself to the diaconal community last weekend, I responded, 40 years? Are you kidding me? Likewise, it's incredible to me that I have lived in the St. Louis region for almost 25 of those 40 years. When I first came to this area, my intent was to complete a year-long chaplaincy residency at St. Luke's, Chesterfield. By the end of the year, after a few interviews in which I placed in the top 2 or 3 of candidates, but no bites, I transitioned temporarily into temp work. And I'd already begun a stint as an organist for Holy Cross Creve Coeur. On the deaconess side, I became part of the St. Louis Area Deaconess Conference, of which I've been chairperson for about a dozen years. This group of ladies doesn't lack for a leader. All of them are leaders, one way or another. I also lead a conference call on Monday evenings, in which the diaconal community gathers to pray what had been called the Deaconess Litany, now more inclusively labeled the diaconal Litany. Rumor has it, friends, that a congregation in a residential neighborhood in suburban St. Louis County is celebrating an anniversary, in case you haven't already heard. How do you feel about 75 years as a faith community? Is yours a response of happy disbelief, an embrace of God's grace? By any chance, looking beyond what any of us sees to what God sees? Jesus foresaw a difficult future for the fledgling church in today's gospel. He makes an astonishing forecast. I've not come to bring peace, as you may have thought, but division. This from the Prince of Peace, who spent 33 years as a human being, while also fully in command of his divinity. He knew human nature. Something always seems to come along to put us on 2 sides of any situation. One of my commentary sources reminded readers that the first hearers of Jesus' declaration may likely have experienced division in their own families as a result of following Jesus in favor of following the strictly Jewish/Mosaic tradition. We know from history that Jesus' first followers would eventually disperse outside the region we know as the Middle East, and that most of his original disciples would ultimately die, martyrs' deaths, as a result of their commitment to this new way of religious thought and life. Division. We certainly know more than we'd like to know about division, whether in the nuclear family, in any type of organization, in the wider society. How do we, as followers of Christ, respond to this reality? Any human institution, and the local church is one of those, has experienced or will experience some variety of dissension, disagreement, or whatever label you choose. What lessons might we learn and apply to address inevitable division as we look beyond 75 years to what God sees for the next 75 years? Our reading today from Hebrews may be a good guide. historical, inspiring, and yet not sparing in detailing their forebears' experience of the faith. You fans of Old Testament may recognize some of the lesser-known names cited in this passage. The background of many of these stems from the time of the judges through times upon times of regional conflict, what we might as well call war. And yet, the writer of Hebrews says at least 18 times in one chapter, by faith, by faith, by faith. Pastor Carey spoke about faith in last week's worship. What is it? When you think faith, how do you describe it? A few ideas, similar in tone. Faith is that constant outlook of trust towards God. Faith is an act of trust in God, a belief in what He says is true that results in action. The writer of Hebrews defines faith as the assurance or confirmation of the things that the believer has not yet seen. Believers living by faith can rest confidently that God's promises will be fulfilled. All familiar explanations, I think. In Trinity's history, who have been our witnesses? Who have provided tangible demonstrations of life by faith? This list is not exhaustive. Firstly, our original founders, who perceived a need for and responded to God's provision for another Lutheran congregation in small-town Kirkwood. Pastoral and lay leadership throughout the decades to the present day. Beloved persons, Ted Hawkins, Jean and Libby Sowers, Mark Thorpe, Murray Bullerdick, Helga Winkler, Betty Murphy, Warren, Betty, and David Nelson, Harry Scott, and certainly others you remember, as well as you yourselves, as witnesses of the faith to the community outside these four walls. As the Sunday school song says, the church is not a building. Again, may I ask, how do you feel about 75 years as a faith community? What vision do you have for the next 75 years of this community's witness? And with what gifts and skills are you able to contribute directly to that vision? What are your dreams for your children and future generations as they participate in this faith community? There are presently at least 4 generations of members in the congregation. We experienced last weekend a formal farewell to our eldest member, Harry, at age 100. That same weekend, we witnessed the baptism of Vivian on the day before her first birthday. 1 to 100. Remarkable. I've told you very briefly about my experience as a Lutheran deaconess. Diakonia, the Greek root, essentially means service among others. We first see a reference to diakonia in the book of Acts, in the midst of a communal spat about meals. Resolution: 7 men are appointed to oversee the distribution of food. Food has to be part of it, let's be honest. You are deacons, each in your own way. Through this congregation, through your family life, through your workplace, you extend diakonia. You extend service among others. You are consecrated, set apart to this service by virtue of your baptism, not by any initials you may bear after your name. The hymn we will have sung during worship this morning spoke of vocation. A vocation, from the Latin vocatio, a call or summons, is an occupation to which a person is especially drawn, or for which one is suited, trained, or qualified. As a child and budding musician whose family attended Sunday school and church every Sunday, I experienced early on an aspiration to somehow utilize my musical talent in the church sphere. This before I had ever heard the word deaconess, or before I ever heard or understood the term vocation. The hymn of the day begins, "How clear is our vocation, Lord, when once we heed your call to live according to your word." It concludes, "In what you give us, Lord, to do, together or alone, in old routines or ventures new, may we not cease to look to you. 4 weeks from today, we will celebrate in worship with food and fun this milestone in Trinity's history. Let this milestone be the starter of your envisioning and participating in the next 75 years of Trinity's faithful diaconia and vocatio to our neighbors near and far. Happy anniversary, Trinity. Here's to the next 75.